is the MLO Project. Thank you. That was unexpected. That scared me a little bit. I was like, jeez. It's like Mike
I've been saving that one.
He was stroking out over there. I was like, man, shit. This is crazy. Well, hey, thank you, everyone. Thank you for that, Michael. That nice little pattern interrupt first thing on a Friday morning. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Joining me, as always, is Mr. McAllister. Michael, what's up, buddy?
I'm ready, dude. Let's go.
Oh, he's ready for this one, man. He's good. That's
we still need to get one of those soundboards, and I wouldn't have to do that.
You know what's funny? Is like, this is how like I have like the soundboard. I've spent zero time like figuring out how to do all the things on it, just because I forget to do it anyway. But
so you can pre-program all those sounds. They give you ones, but you can also put custom ones.
Yeah.
So we should just take all of the funny sounds that they have, and then have me do a voiceover trying to make the same sound.
There we go.
Wah, wah, wah.
Wah. Or the Price is Right, the boop-a-doo, which happened quite a bit. All right, my friends. So what are we talking about today? We are talking about the cold, hard, not truths, not facts, but the untruths, the myths of this business. And basically, look, Michael's seen it. I've seen it. Everyone's going to tell you, especially if you're a new originator, everyone's going to tell you there's only one way to do this business. And in my day, I did this, and you have to do this. You have to do that. You don't care about success if you don't do this. Like, there's so many things that we hear about getting into this bit, or now is not a good time to be in this business. You hear so many like untruths about this business from people that really, for whatever, obviously everyone's got their own agenda. We have our own agenda too, except that our agenda is your success. So that's the one difference between us and a lot of other people. But everyone has their own lens and how they're looking at it. And ultimately, what does it do? It confuses the shit out of everybody. I get this from loan officers. I don't know who to listen to. I don't know this or that. So we wanted to tackle some of the things that you probably have heard to be true. Now, what I will say is when I say it's an untruth, and not like a lie, right? One is I didn't want to be confrontational today. I wanted to be nice on this Friday. But the thing is that when someone says that, like, this is what you have to do, in their world and how they carry themselves, like, that absolutely might be a truth for them. And that's the one thing I want to get across today, is that everything is in the eye of a beholder, and that there's so many different variables. And a lot of these people don't even think about it themselves. They're like, let's say, for example, right, we'll just tackle this one right off the start, is like, you have to dress to the nines, like dress for success, dress for the job that you want, all this other stuff, right? Like dress, and guys, look, obviously you want to be professional, but ultimately, like, you don't, like, someone's like, I got my suits made, I'm doing all that stuff. And this is me not to say that is a bad thing. What I'm saying is that it's not just the suits. That plays into a lot of other things that they do that makes that successful for them. And so we want to tackle it as just saying, like, guys, it's not binary, right? It isn't an absolute that you do all these things and be successful. So we want to tackle all these things just to give kind of like a baseline. Plus, we knew this would actually probably be somewhat of a debate type, not from Michael and myself, but from other people listening to this, like, oh, I disagree with that. We love those, right? We love when people are like, I disagree with everything that you guys are saying. So, Michael, like, I'm going to throw it over to you. Let's hit it. Let's hit the ground running, man. Like, what are some untruths that we have in this industry?
Yeah. So I haven't heard this one as much lately, partially just because of the circles that we're in, that we, we hang out a lot online, obviously. And so a lot of the loan officers that we like do business with are also, already predisposed to like the idea of doing that. But when I got into the business, I got a lot of shit for the amount of time that I spent behind my desk, the amount of time that I spent like either calling lead lists that the company was providing, but then doing that so that I wouldn't have to go out and travel different places because I'm setting up systems for my business and blah, blah, blah. And don't get me wrong, like anybody, no matter where you spend your time, has opportunity to optimize the time that they're spending in their business. So I'm not at all saying that like I was doing everything right at that time, but what I always heard was that in order to generate business, like that I wasn't going to be able to generate business from behind my desk. That was like the phrase, the thing that people told me. And this was, again, back in 2016, 2017 is probably the last time I heard this. But I just think about who I know in our market and the clients that we do bring on, as far as like enterprise clients give us a kind of a unique view where we don't just interact with the people that are already predisposed to internet marketing. We interact with heavy hitters and top producers that have been resisting, using a freaking CRM in their business their entire career. And so I still think that there's probably a lot of people out there saying this, and that there's probably a lot of managers, well-intentioned managers out there that give LO shit for the amount of time that they spend at their desk behind their desk at their computer, without even knowing or understanding what it is that LO is working on. So I'm not going to say that just because you're behind your desk, you're doing the right thing, but I am going to say that in 2025, your location, and whether you're behind your desk or sitting at your laptop at home or sitting at your laptop at your second home or whatever, like, to me, that makes no difference in your level of productivity today.
Yeah. And guys, when it comes down to it, it goes back to, what I talked about being many variables, is that when you're looking at what is it going to take, like, what do I have to do? Because like, even though Michael's saying like 2016 or whatever, I still hear that when it's like, hey, you're not going to be able to do this if you don't get out of your desk. I see that comment still, right, all the time. And yes, do you want to get out there and create relationships? Yeah, absolutely. Like, you got to do that too. But remember, everyone's going to work differently. One thing that I learned as someone that, that ran a mortgage company, like I wasn't the CEO, but I was just co-owner and an executive, ran a sales team, coach loan. There's not one way. If I went to one of our branches with like 17 loan officers, every single one of those loan officers did business probably in a different way, right? Their processors did something different than another loan officer's processor. Their LOA did different tasks than another LOA. That's why like having that top down, like structured, just in like an entrepreneurial world, it just doesn't really work because everybody works a different way. And so, talking about like, you got to dress to the nines, you got to have that like full suit and tie and all that other stuff. Like I know $1 million producers, and I don't mean like they've done $1 million in origination, meaning like they've made $1 million+ are like a t-shirt and backwards hat guy, right? Not just because I'm wearing a t-shirt and backwards hat, right? But like that's what it is. And so I know that like in my company, like this is how I dress. And so like everyone else was wearing like, slacks and like a dress shirt and ties and stuff like that. That was just never me. Now, of course, I had a suit and stuff when like the occasion called for it, but like that's not how I was rolling. And so, I don't want to make this like a dress code thing, but I want to also take it to like the activities that you do, right? So, for example, people will probably tell you, like, if you're getting into this business, the number one piece of advice to get leads, I guarantee you, will probably be to chase agents, to call agents, go after agents. That's going to be the number one piece of advice, right? That definitely isn't the number one way to get business. It is for a lot of loan officers because they don't know how to get business any other way. But that's not the only way to get business. Like I talked about, a shared client, one that a coaching member of mine, and also, and he's also an Empower LO client, and that is, his calendar's booked 2.5 weeks out, right? He's got 43 active loans in the pipeline, and he doesn't talk to agents. He doesn't go after agents. He doesn't chase business. It all comes to him organically and naturally. And so like that's a way to get business. But that, when you're talking to certain people in this business, they're going to of course share. And again, there's nothing wrong with that because they're sharing with you as like, this is the only way I know how to get business. However, those people that I know that are like, this is how I've always gotten business, they're the ones that are coming to me saying, what I've been doing basically my whole career isn't as effective or working as well as it used to for my whole career. And so I need something different. And so just know that when you're getting any type of advice from people on like, this is the way to do business, just know that like that's through their lens and there's other ways for that business to happen, or there's other ways to look at it. And especially when people are saying like now's not a good time to get in an industry, I would argue that now is the best time to get in the industry, just simply because of what we've been talking about. There's a lot of people stuck in their ways, that are stuck in the dogma and romantic about the way things used to be, as opposed to you coming in fresh and not bogged down with bad habits or perspectives. And some of the people that I know that are absolutely doing like the best, and they don't know any better, are the ones that have only been in the business the last 12, 24 months.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. I want to kick this back over to you, because I have another one, but I think that you have really good insight into this through a couple of your relationships and then you personally, which is the idea that in order to be successful in mortgage, especially starting new, you should be an extrovert. That extroverts make the best loan officers. You've talked about extroversion, introversion. Like, what is this? Like, when you hear this, like, do you still hear this out in the market? Do you feel like this is still an untruth? Do you feel like this is maybe something I'm hanging on to from my past, or is this something that we still hear and is worth addressing? And then B, like, what does this mean to you?
I think I don't know if about being an extrovert. I think it's more of like, you have to be like have to have those extroverted activities, right? Like you can't just be, whatever doing that. However, I would argue that there's plenty of people that are doing well that aren't extroverts at all. Like, so for me, I'm an introvert, right? And I say that all the time. So I begrudgingly am an extroverted when I need to be, like at certain events or whatever, but I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy that like go across the room and start introducing myself to a bunch of people, right? Now, this is someone that that I did really well in sales. I did great running a sales team. But like going out there and like shaking hands, kissing baby, like that's not me. Now, I would argue that like being extroverted is definitely helpful, because that leads into like just communicating with more people that an introvert probably wouldn't communicate with. And the more people you talk to, the better you're going to do. Now, do you need to be, right? Like, because like, I don't know what the best term, maybe it's an accidental extrovert, right? But there's a lot of people that I know that are introverted.
An adapted extrovert.
Yeah, an adapted extrovert, right? Like they do that stuff, but you don't need to be that person. And that's another thing, is that is just what you hear, or you see someone that's successful and they're out there, they are that person that like you could throw them in the middle of any conversation and they're going to be able to talk to whoever. I know a couple people, I'll give a shout out to Frank Ferentz at EPM. That dude, I'll tell you, like you could throw that guy in any situation, any scenario, and he's going to come out with like a lead, right? Like anything, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? I've seen him get a refi lead from our pilot on our plane. No joke, not even joking at all, right? Like, just because he's out there, he's he is a relationship guy. But I can't be him, right? Like I could never do what he does. But I could be just as successful as him, and without having to be that. So what I would say is that you obviously, the activities matter and conversations matter. Is it easier if you're just like organically and naturally, extroverted? Sure. Right. Does it mean that you have to be those things? Absolutely not.
Yeah. I like what made me want to bring this up and talk about this is, to touch on really quick, just the definition, or at least like the way I understand it, definition, introvert versus extrovert, because everybody uses these words, but getting on the same page as far as like what I mean by this, or hopefully what we mean by this. An introvert is somebody who gets their energy, like gets their batteries recharged by time alone, versus an extrovert is somebody who spending time with other people is going to fill their cup. It's going to fill their batteries. And so the adapted extrovert is somebody who is not like, being around other people does drain them, but they learn the skills that they need to learn to be extroverted in those moments. Yep. Essentially, right? And so the reason why it stuck out to me as an untruth is not necessarily because anybody's out there saying you have to be an extrovert to be successful, but it's more so the natural the natural tendency that we have when we see somebody that's successful to project like traits onto them and assume that because we see their extroverted tendency in that environment, that they're an extrovert also. And why I wanted to bring this up is because what I've learned over the last year or 2 years is some of the most successful people in this industry, if not the most successful, successful people in this industry at a large scale, are adapted extroverts, are people that are naturally introverted for whatever reason, right? I'm not saying it's causation, there's correlation versus causation. Like, I'm not saying that like they are successful because of that introversion with an adapted extroversion. But what I'm saying is, like, if you think that you can't be successful in this industry because you think about that definition of introversion and extroversion and you immediately know that you're an introvert, like, don't put yourself in that box, because at the end of the day, those adapted extroverts are some of the most successful people I've ever met.
Yeah. And taking that a little bit step further is that there's also a comfort level that you get to, right? Doing certain things. When you do them, like me, I wasn't comfortable doing this, public speaking on, stage, all of that stuff, like something that I had to, those are things that I had to learn, right? And do. And just like anything else that you're doing, whether it's like, talking on the phone or understanding how to have a good conversation, a good sales conversation, which really doesn't play into whether you're introverted or extroverted. But what I'm just saying is that everything is a learned behavior, right? And you just got to decide what learned behavior you need to focus on that's going to fit in the way that you do business. And, when we're talking about like untruths, and this is a big one, and I see this all the time. And it's funny, in 2025, this really shouldn't be a debate or a conversation. But like, I see this all the time where, like, when people are, the wells dry, the quote unquote agent people, and they're like, I'm struggling to get and someone's like mentions like social media, and they're like, well, that's not, that social media is not really a thing. I've never gotten one thing off. So you see that a lot. But on the other side, you'll see people like will comment. They're like, they're like 80%, 90% of my business comes off social media. Yep. Right. And so the biggest untruth that you'll see is that social media doesn't generate business. Right. And anyone that says that, and guys, like, I try not to be like an absolute when it comes to some of these things, but I'll tell you,
but they're absolutely an idiot.
They're absolutely wrong, right? But like, but what I'll say is that, like, if anyone tells you that social media won't generate you business, then anything that they say after is completely worthless. Like, just that run away far from them. I know there is somewhat of a, there's some, people, coaches, whatever you want to call them, in the industry that will talk about these things. They'll post this on social media, by the way. But they'll post like this data and content and talk about like, well, this and that. And they don't understand what the data they're looking at, and ultimately understanding like what the last mile means. And that's a different conversation for a different thing. But the point is that when you look at any sales business, right, that comes from connectivity, connections, conversations, relationships. The genesis of all of that is being in front of people, right? And so how do you do that? How do you get in front of people, right? And there's many ways to do it, and social media is one of those ways. And the biggest lie that has ever been, and I'll call this a straight up lie, the biggest lie that you've been told as an originator is that the mortgage industry, and because of its price point, is a reason why social media and those types of channels don't work for getting business, which is absolutely stupid. Because one thing that guys, look, and this is coming from people that don't really understand consumerism or psychology or NLP or neuromarketing or neuroscience, is what made me great at Consumer Direct was because I didn't care about any of the stuff that we cared about as an industry. I cared about why the consumer mindset says yes and says no, period. End of story. And became an expert at those questions and the things that make them do what they do. And so when you're talking about like, the price point is you look at, and this is what kills me, is like there's an up and coming jet service called Amalfi Jets. Maybe you've seen the guy on TikTok, Colin from Amalfi Jets, right? Like, you're talking about like people that are filling like 1, 2, 3, 5 million on a card right? And people get recommended by watching their TikToks, right? So if price point is an issue, right, I would say $5 million is a lot more than the average sell price of like $375,000, right?
Well, and I was thinking about this. Are you part of the Moto Watch group on Facebook, the Moto Watch Club group? Dude, that like I see watches every day exchange and this anytime I feel like the market is not cooperating or there's not enough money out there or anything, I go to this fucking group and I watch in the last hour. Oh, here we go. 1 hour ago, Richard Mille watch posted for 1.25 million. And it'll sell in a couple hours. Like there's that many people in this group that just have and just throw it around Facebook, like inside of a Facebook group, like literally just, it's crazy. So yes, that's the first thing that came to mind when people start thinking that their price point has something to do with why people won't buy on social.
Yeah. And when I talk about $1 million producers or multi-million-dollar producers in both real estate and mortgage, the ones that come to my mind first are ones that are all playing large on social media. Right. Some of these people that you've seen on like the Bravo shows of real estate and whatever, like they built their entire book of business off of Facebook. Right. And this is just like the piece of that. And so that to me is the biggest lie, is that because of our price point, we have to be different. And that's just not the case. All we have to do is relate to the consumer and show them that we are the expert that can solve their problem. That's the freaking ball game. That's the conversation. It has nothing to do with all this other shit, social media or not, right? And again, it's all variables. Like I would love to like break this down into a simple question or simple solution. And to me, it is. Is there many variables a part of that solution of why they say yes and why they say no? Absolutely. But it does boil down to those two things, and price point does not play a role into that. Rate does not play a role into that. And a lot of people are listening right now, like shaking their heads. They don't believe this or that or whatever. And let me ask you this. Is every consumer in the last 12 months, do you think that they got the best rate that was available at that time? Probably not, right? If you look at, I'm talking market. I'm talking end-to-end market, of the $1.8 trillion in origination that was done. Do you think that every single one of those consumers had the best rate and the best cost? Absolutely not. We know that. We know that for a fact that isn't the case.
Look at Rocket's Consumer Direct market share, and
that's not the truth, right? And so at the end of the day, it's like who's going to play better to the consumers, and who's going to be on social media? Who's going to do that? Do you think like Rocket and all these other ones that spend what they spend on a monthly basis for social media and ads and stuff like that everywhere? Like, do you think that they're just doing that for fun, or do you think they do that because it drives ROI? And so that's the biggest lie that I see is when people say social media doesn't work or this, or anyone that talks about that, it absolutely does. Now, am I saying that it's the only way to do it, or that you have to be doing it? No, but what else? But again, I will refer back to what I said at the very beginning. Your success is going to be dependent on one thing and one thing only, and that's how many conversations you could have about housing and real estate. Period. That's it. And so, what can you do to allow you to have as many of those freaking conversations as possible? Social media is one of them. Email is one of them, right? A lot of these networking and all these other things we've been talking about is one of them. But ultimately, that any one person that tells you that that's not, and yet that's an important channel for conversations. Again, throw that out with the bathwater, right? Throw that way out of there, because it's just because they don't believe in it, or more than likely is they suck at it and they can't find a way to be successful at it.
It goes back to what you said earlier about, there being a million different ways to run your business, to go about this business and growing it. And like you said, the name of the game is how many conversations about housing and real estate can you have? And really what you should be leaning into, and this is where you get to ignore all the untruths, right? So we're talking about the untruths, and so what's the alternative? Like, what do you listen to? Well, you listen to on some level, your gut and what is going to be the easiest path to you having that volume of conversations. So if you're the type of person that is super active on social, then odds are your quickest path to having 1 million housing conversations is to do it on social. if you're not, if you don't even have the Facebook app on your phone and you log in every couple years, like that's not going to be your quickest path. So no matter how many people, like it could be an untruth the other way too, where like, you know, somebody new in this, somebody that's been in this industry for a few years and is trying to build some influence might say that the only way to grow your business in 2025 is with social. And that's not true either. If you're not the type of person that's going to go out there and leverage your social media to build that business, then that's not going to be your best option either. And so, you know, at the end of the day, it really does go back to kind of the first point that Frazier made, which is that there's so many different ways to run this business. And if anybody is saying anything, including us, if anybody is saying anything like definitively 100%, that should be a red flag. A red flag that like, this person might be a little bit ignorant, because there's no 100% right or 100% wrong way to go about this business.
Yeah, 100%. All right, man. I think we covered the big ones. Do you think there's anything we left out?
I don't think so. And if there is, I'll take it to Facebook and debate somebody about it there.
We'll put it on social. All right, my friends. I think we'll leave it at that. And again, what we want to leave you with is that, look, everyone's going to have an opinion, right? Just like, you know, just what is it? Elbows and assholes. Everyone's got one.
Yeah,
know,
asshole.
One of those
I didn't hear the elbows one, but
I don't know. I could have just made that up. I don't know. But
I think that's true.
Okay, but like everyone's got one, and like Michael said, even us, right? Like so, like you know, always trust but verify. But the main point we want to get across is there's a lot of bad info out there, and there's a lot of myths and straight up lies about this business, how you're successful and the things you need to do. More importantly, you know, be careful who you listen to. Understand that there's a lot of variables involved with being successful in this business, and you're going to find your own way. And a lot of people, I can't think of really a lot of loan officers. In fact, I can't think of any of the ones that I know that are really successful. I don't think any one of them do business the same way. And so they're all different, or all unique. We're all, you know, CEOs of our own brand. So act as if, and go out there, be you, and find the success that you're going to work for. So.
I had to throw one more in there.
One more in there. All right. So like, it's good to see him like out, because like the last few episodes, like he's been kind of a wet blanket. So I'm glad to see I've been glad to see that he's actually a little having some fun with this. But on behalf of Michael McAllister, I am Frazier. This is the MLO Project, empowered by Empower LO. Thank you for being here. Give us a shout out. Share this episode on social media. Share it with anyone who you think it can provide value to. And we will see you on the next episode. Take care.